Welcome to Suffolk Matters, where Suffolk County meets the men and women of Suffolk AME. News, opinions, and insights you won't hear anywhere else. Filling in for AME President Dan Levler, AME Executive Vice President Tom Moran.
Good morning and Happy New Year, and welcome to Suffolk Matters. I'm Tom Moran, the Executive Vice President of Suffolk AME, filling in for the President Dan Levler. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Kristina Moon from the Billy Moon Foundation. Kristina, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Happy New Year.
I want to jump into exactly who was Billy Moon and what inspired the creation of this foundation.
Well, Billy was my husband. More importantly, he was an amazing father. But he was a big personality. I like to tell people he was 6'4". You couldn't miss him when he walked into a room. And he was a 21-year veteran of the FDNY, as well as a 28-year veteran of the Islip Volunteer Fire Department. And Billy passed away in December of 2022.
And the unfortunate, untimely passing of Billy, it led to, I feel like, especially in the fire service, or people that knew Billy, about organ donation and how that affects people. So
Billy fell while preparing for a training exercise inside the quarters of Rescue 2 on December 12th, 2022. And after about a week in the hospital and a lot of intensive interventions and multiple surgeries, we realized he wasn't going in the direction that we hoped he was going to. And one of the things Billy and I had in our relationship was what I keep telling people were hard conversations. And I knew he had wishes to be an organ donor. And when he passed away, one of the things, we made sure we donated his organs. And with that, he saved the lives of 5 others, 2 of which were retired members of the FDNY, and 1 had 9/11 related lung disease. So it kind of, all of a sudden, this organic process of change kind of happened. I realized this was a topic people all agreed was important, but nobody was really talking about it. So that's kind of where we started because of it.
And for the people that are listening, and you did say it's a tough conversation to have. What does a conversation like that look like? Is it just something that you casually say, or it's one of those things where it's just back and forth, and you talk about something, but how does those wishes, or how did you know that? Walk us through what that conversation is like.
Well, for anyone that knew my husband, this would probably make the most sense, is he was standing about 10 to 15 feet away from me in our living room, and I was in the dining room. And he kind of looked at me one day, and he goes, "Are you an organ donor?" And I looked back at him. I said, I would. I don't think it's on my license, but I would. And he looked at me, and he goes, "Well, why not?" And I changed my license. But in reality, more than once throughout our relationship, were we just sitting on the couch and, kind of casual conversation. Sometimes it may have been because of something we were going through with a friend or a family, or you maybe see something that just triggers the conversation. And we kind of just talked about what our wishes were. Nobody wants to talk about what happens when they die. We would like to live in the moment, and it's rainbows and cupcakes, and, we love those moments in life. You want to live life. But in reality, it's a conversation that should be normalized, because God forbid you are put in that position, especially in the fire service and our first responders. Their lives are on the line every day. So to have to deal with that stress already happening in your life, it kind of lessens it, even if it's just a little bit, on your loved ones, with them knowing what your wish is. Yeah, you can register online. Yes, you can put it on your license. But communicating with people is just as important.
And, do you think that being in the role that Billy was, being a volunteer and a chief with the Islip Fire Department, and making a career being a firefighter in the FDNY, and then Rescue 2, that's like the elite of the elite. Do you think it was him going and seeing people in their worst times that made him want to be an organ donor, or do you think that it was more something that he always wanted to do, or is it something that happened over time, do you think?
I think it was just him. Billy was always about doing the right thing and being there for others. Yeah, we live and breathe fire in my house, right? But at the same time, it was still instilling the importance of doing the right thing and being there for other people. I would tell people, Billy may not show up on time, but if you needed him, he was there. And that was the same way from being a first responder to being an organ donor. He just knew it was the right thing to do. He would have the same conversation at the kitchen table in the firehouse. And I tell people all the time, the firehouse and the FDNY, it's like the gospel, and he would change, people at work would change their license because he was passionate. And if he was passionate about something, you knew about it. And this was one of those instances.
Now, some of the programs, the initiatives. Now, this happens. I guess you're put in a spot where you have to make some tough decisions at that time after Billy's accident. After they do the organ donation. What sets you on the path to start this foundation? What is the initiatives, and what exactly does the Billy Moon Foundation do?
So a few weeks after Billy passed away, I was invited to go speak to the probationary firefighter class at the FDNY Academy. And that's where I realized that so many people agreed that this topic was important. And when I'm talking to them, and I've talked to 5 classes now, they're about to embark on what Billy called the best job in the world. He never worked a day in his life. But at the same time, as your relationships change and your world evolves, letting people know and communicating to people what your wishes are really becomes so important. And all of a sudden, people started reaching out to me, and it kind of became this domino effect of people wanting to hear more about our story and what was going on. I've actually been to 6 states. I was in 6 states in 2024. Now that we're out of 2024, I have probably spoken to almost 10,000 people in person, just sharing our story, advocating for organ donation. That's been a big part of our initiatives. But we're also providing financial support for organ donor and recipient families because we feel the need to help them with food, lodging, transportation. Those are things people shouldn't have to worry about when they're either awaiting the death of a loved one to donate their organs, or possibly in the final days awaiting an organ transplant. So all of these initiatives have really started to come to play because of people wanting to hear more and talking to people and hearing what their needs were and what they've noticed or what roadblocks they've encountered in their own experiences. And actually even comes from, we're friends with 3 of Billy's recipients. And those relationships and those conversations have even also opened up doors to understanding the donor and recipient world even more.
So from the first time that you're asked to speak about organ donation to where you are now, what's the evolution of it? Is it just the beginning of you just telling the story? How do you not how do you put your words together, but how is the process from the first time somebody, even if it was just a casual conversation, like having about organ donation, to speaking to a large group, speaking to thousands of people? How does that evolve?
What started with that, probationary class of me spending 2 to 3 minutes up there just trying to spit the words out, especially because weeks earlier they were lining the streets of Main Street in Bayshore for Billy's funeral. They were looking at us and I was looking at them. So to be there one-on-one, in that small group with them was very impactful. When I'm speaking to them, there's a class of about 300. I'm letting them know in 17 days, that entire class could be gone awaiting an organ because 17 people die a day awaiting an organ transplant. And from that conversation, it became this 20-minute presentation that I do when I go and I travel, because people, they hear the story. It's a natural conversation for me to talk about my family. So that, I think, helps in the situation. And I love talking about Billy. I think knowing what his wishes were and where we ended up speaks volumes to our relationship. So it just kind of kept building and evolving to moments like this, to hosting fundraising events and finding sponsors and all these people on board with what we're doing.
Not something that you thought you would be doing at this point in your life, but the impact that you're making in other people's lives, the people that are recipients, the people that are waiting to be recipients, that hope, or the message that you craft and give to, the message that you put out there to encourage people to become an organ donor. So when somebody is an organ donor, what exactly is the process? What happens, and how does that help others?
So a deceased donor one person can save 8 lives, and then they can, with their organs, and they can improve up to 75 more through tissue donation. And then a living donor can be done with the kidneys and the liver. So it depends on what hospital and transplant center is available for a living donor to help somebody as far as the needs of a kidney or a liver.
So explain to us how registering as an organ donor can make a difference, and is it something that's state by state? Can I be an organ donor, but I don't have a driver's license, or I just have an ID? How do I become an organ donor, and is it different state by state in that process?
So a deceased donor can save, one person can save 8 lives and improve up to 75 more, right? But right now in the United States, we have over 103,000 people currently on the organ donation list, and over 8,000 of them are here in New York alone. Actually, New York is probably towards the bottom of the registered organ donation list. We just recently hit 50%, and the national average is 64%. Every state has an organ donor registry, but there is also a national registry. They don't necessarily mesh as far as they don't become one registry, but every area will look at both registries. One thing I've learned is it's a well-intentioned system, but it definitely has a few flaws in place. So those two registries are checked. So you could go to Donate Life New York State, or you can go to registerme.org, and one is the national registry and one is the New York State. But even if I was traveling in, say, California, they're going to check the New York State registry and the national registry. You can check the box on your license. You can register online, but you can also have the conversation with a loved one as well. So no matter what, even if you're not registered online or on your license, if your significant other or your next of kin knows what your wishes are, that will be used. And over 80% of families will say yes if they're in a hospital and in the position. But I guess the whole big message is, why put someone in that position and just make that decision for them already.
Sure, and and that's not the best time to have to worry about making these decisions.
People have conflicts. They can argue. I've had people reach out to me and they're like, "Thank you so much for sharing your story." Organ donation was the light in the darkest days of my life. I remember during Billy's dignified transfer, it's the strangest feeling to express to people, because he's in an ambulance in front of me and I can see him, and I'm in a van for the FDNY with family, and all of a sudden I just had this rush of emotion come over me, like everything's going to be okay. It was Christmas, and my Christmas was about to be very different. And my kids were 8 and 10 at the time. But for some reason, I just had this feeling of 5 people are about to live and have this Christmas miracle because Billy checked a box and knew to tell me about it. So it's the rush of emotion that goes along with it. And when you're explaining that to somebody, I had a family once like, "Oh, thank you so much." And then another family member came in and they said, we don't know if that's really what they wanted. We're not donating their organs. And you don't want to you don't want to have that kind of conflict when people are already starting the grieving process. So I think it's just that much more important to let people know. And then the other thing is, people think that, did they stop helping Billy because you told them he was an organ donor? I'm like, no, they never stopped helping him. And that's the biggest misconception that's out there, is people think that, well, once you tell them, that's it, they're not going to help him anymore. I blurted it out in a room. I call it the little yellow room with the old broken chairs at Kings County Hospital. And I was like, "No, he's an organ donor." And they looked at me like I had 3 heads, and they're like, "We're not there yet." And I told them, "I know, but I just feel like it's something you need to know." And it was still a few days after that before we made the decision. They kept helping him. It's just I felt like they needed to know that information. So those misconceptions, I think, hold people back. But when in reality, they're never an issue.
And the reality of it is that you are somebody that lived through this. Again, somebody that might have to cross that bridge, knowing this story, knowing how you felt, knowing how you got to that point and where you got to be right now in this moment about your passion, I'll say, for the foundation and for the work that the foundation and organ donation, that is also a gift that you are giving to people, that, that gift that you felt you're also now giving to other people just by your words, and that is something that is truly an amazing thing.
Thank you. I kind of call it my therapy, but I also think it sets an example for my kids. You know, by knowing Billy's heart, liver, and lung recipients, it's shown them what their relationships can be and what the impact of the organ donation of what Dad did. You know, one thing they've said is that they hope each of them live to be 100 because that means a piece of Dad did too. But they get to talk to them. You know, we were at our fundraiser back in May, and all of a sudden, my son Colin comes running up to me. He goes, Mom, someone's here. You have to come say hi. You have to come say hi. I'm like, okay. And it was Terry Jordan. It was Billy's lung recipient because he was so excited to see him, and he wanted to make sure I said hi to him. You know, we met Billy's heart recipient at Live On New York, which is our organ procurement organization here in the Long Island, New York City area. And you're sitting there and you're waiting, and, you know, it's such a big, there's cameras and family and lots of people. So you're nervous enough as it is. And I know it's a man who has his heart. And all of a sudden, I didn't know at the time, but I know now is to receive a heart, it needs to be from somebody of a similar stature to you. And it makes perfect sense because you need a heart that's going to be able to be strong enough to pump the blood throughout your body. So I'm waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden Rich comes out, and he's the same size as Billy. Billy was 6'4", he's 6'3". And those feelings were, there's no words to describe how profound it was. And the kids are listening to the heart, and Brianne goes, she goes, it was a little slow at first, and then it started beating faster, and that's how I knew it was him, referring to Billy. So all of that encompasses just what the experience could really do for someone. Those relationships, while I know some people can be afraid to have them, they have definitely helped our family.
When someone is a donor, you just said that about the same stature. I wasn't even something I would think about, but is it, if you donate your lungs, can it be to a man or a woman? Can it be used that way? Because that's something that I just thought about, that I didn't even think about anything until you said about the same size.
Oh, I've got a fun fact for you. Yeah, it can be to a man or to a woman. They can resize your lungs to fit someone else's body, and that's what they did for Billy's lungs to Terry Jordan.
It's amazing.
Yeah, because Billy probably had a good 6 inches on Terry. Yeah.
Wow.
I had no idea. And Pat Reynolds had a genetic liver disease. So he was searching for a living donor at first because they could take a piece of someone's donor, of someone's liver. If your lobes are proportioned a certain way, the liver regenerates itself. So it would have been fine, but he was unfortunately unable to find one. So it ended up that Billy was a perfect match for him. There's a lot of moving parts to it. Oh. It all depends on the organ. My joke is that Grey's Anatomy lied to me. And there's no magic medevac that's going to sprinkle organs all over the country after sitting on dry ice. There's a time limit. And it starts from the second surgery starts and the organ procurement begins. Certain organs have to go practically OR to OR. It's a very small, time span. Mm-hmm. So Billy's lungs went from OR to OR at NYU. His heart was driven less than an hour away to Westchester. The kidneys can sit on dialysis for 2 days, but other organs, they can't. So there's a timeline, and that's why when you have more people registered in your communities, you're more likely to help your communities, because they can get to you in time.
Yeah, the virtual logistics, just like you just said, is it's mind-boggling for somebody that's like myself that's just learning about it.
If someone needs a transplant, if they're not within a certain driving distance of a transplant center, they could be denied a transplant. Mm-hmm. Unless they could go and stay there. And that's part of the initiatives with the foundation is, there's people from upstate who need to come stay in New York City or right near New York City to be close enough to their transplant center. Well, we all know how much it costs to spend a night in New York City. Why? Let's make that better for them. Let's find hotel chains that are willing to give us a discounted rate and give them some money so they can stay a week, a few weeks in a hotel without it being such a financial burden on their family.
Now, when people talk about that they're on a donor list, that they're waiting, is it, how does that process pan out? Is it just, it's not like you signed up first, so you're the first person, or what exactly does that end of it look like?
So it comes obviously down to the severity of their need. How far into their stages of needing an organ are there. But now they have to be matched by blood type, the size of the person. There's a lot of different medical factors that come into play, the distance, how far away someone is. So all of those pieces come into play when they're trying to find a match for somebody. So even if you take like a kidney, there's so many kidneys can be matched by different percentages. So the higher the percentage, the more like, the better of a match it would be in the long run. But they have there's so many tests and blood work, and even when someone decides they're going to be an organ donor, or a family decides for someone, it still takes a few days. So we made the announcement on the 16th of December. And a lot of people out there have that as Billy's date of death because that's the day that we kind of announced to the world that he wasn't going to make it. But starting at that point, they ran a lot of tests with Billy. They checked his blood type. They're checking the registries. It wasn't until the 20th that he passed away with his organ procurement because of all that matching and all those little details that are involved in it. And other people, it's faster. It all depends on the situation and the person, but it does change a little bit of the end outcome.
Well, it really, I've said it, it's amazing. It really is to learn and find out how this gets done. The community involvement end of the foundation, what are the efforts on that end, and what opportunities are there for volunteers? How do they get involved with the foundation?
So really, we kind of say that, our tagline is, be a forever hero, donate life, right? And we're providing support, advocacy, and awareness for organ donation. So what we've been doing is a lot of the talking about it, a lot of the advocacy piece, which is great because I feel like every time I go and talk somewhere, it ends up leading to somewhere else that I can, share our story. And really those initiatives, especially moving into 2025, we're hoping to help 50 plus families. We've partnered up with North Shore University Hospital and NYU Langone in Manhattan as a foundation that they reach out to when they have a family in need. And we've worked with other families outside of those organizations, but we have a specific partnership with them so they can reach out to us when they know they have a donor or recipient family in need of some type of financial assistance. The money that we raise is going to support those families is really what ends up happening. And in April, we have our first gala. We're doing a casino night at the Heritage Club in Bethpage, which I'm really looking forward to. The goal is to keep raising the money to help the families. We're also working on a family room in a local transplant center. So anything we raise, which is through donations and our event, is going to support people. Traveling, it's not supporting travel, it's supporting families. And it's letting people know just how important organ donation can be and what it means to have a hard conversation with your loved ones.
And how could people just volunteer to help with this, with your initiatives? What would they be able to do? Is it help with that fundraising? Is it to seek donations? What exactly would a volunteer be able to help you do with the foundation?
So definitely spreading the word and sharing. We're going to be setting up some additional, we have fundraising through our website. If people would like to start a team fundraiser, they can reach out to us at info@billymoonfoundation.org. But also, I think just coming, attending, seeing what we're doing. We're collecting stories of hope. We'd like to hear from donor and recipient families, and we share them through our social media. So Billy's favorite number was 88. And it's kind of become a family number, and my kids wear it for all their sports. So on 8/8/24, we launched those partnerships with the transplant centers. But on 8/8/25, we're actually launching donor days throughout different parts of the country where people can open up their bay doors or a community center and have an organ donation sign-up day. It's also, we've modeled it after the FDNY where they have a donor day. They do bone marrow swabs, a blood drive, and organ donation signups. So we're looking to also do that. So we'll be looking for volunteers, for people to help us. Just communicating with us and sharing the message and helping raise money is really the best way to go about it. If people have other ideas or other ways they want to help, they can reach out to us through our website at billymoonfoundation.org. But those are the big initiatives really right now.
Kristina, now that we've learned about how this whole foundation started, the amazing story of Billy and you moving this foundation forward, how does somebody register to be an organ donor?
The obvious is what we all know, right? Is the DMV. You can register on your license. You can change your license the next time you're there. You can go online. So there's registerme.org or Donate Life New York State. Or you can even go to our website and click the link to register. And all of those places will lead you to those registries that are both state and national.
Kristina, I have to tell you, this actually today was the first time meeting you, but having a relationship and knowing Billy for many years, I feel like he's with us today. I really do mean that. It is amazing work that you are doing. I've said that over and over again. The true gift, like you said, that you're helping people, the people that are walking around right now that are able to enjoy life with their families because of Billy Moon and him being an organ donor. There's nothing like that gift. I'm sure that, he's living on through others, and you are continuing to live on his name by the foundation's work and your work and your passion for this. So I thank you for being our guest today. Happy New Year to you again, and for all the growth to continue with the foundation in 2025.
Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate you supporting Billy's legacy. It means a lot.
Thanks for listening today. Check out the Billy Moon Foundation on their website, and we'll see our listeners next week, next Sunday.